Hey guys, Fraser here. Listen to the full episode of Unraveling the Son-In-Law exclusively on Pocket FM app. Click the link in description to install the app now.
Brett did not know that Fraser had secretly been spending large amounts of money to support the other two companies, so his confusion was genuine. So was Walter's. Walter mumbled as he thought quickly. Was I not supposed to know this? He wondered. Or maybe I wasn't supposed to say anything about it. Nick didn't tell me what to expect. I tried to contact the other CEOs to discuss the situation, but they never responded. It's like the fact that I have a large international company means nothing to them. I might as well have been trying to talk to a brick wall. He glanced uneasily at Fraser and felt a burst of trepidation. Why do I get the feeling that Nick has planned this all out like a game of chess, but I'm failing at the first move? My first test is to infiltrate the company, and if I fail at that, then I can't keep playing the game. What are you trying to say? He finally asked Fraser. I'm supposed to be in control of the situation, he thought. How did this get away from me? Fraser stood up abruptly, seeming to change with lightning speed. You know what I'm saying, he said. He was no longer mild-mannered and ignorant. Now, he was aggressive and very much in control. I'll give you one chance to speak honestly. Who sent you? In his chair, Walter leaned back as far as he could and tried not to show how scared he was. All right, he said with false bravado. Yes, my company has a powerful financial backer. And let me tell you, if you dare lay a finger on me, he'll hunt you down. Is that so? Fraser's eyes narrowed. Who is it? Walter pressed his lips together and refused to say anything further. He's no ordinary businessman, he thought, and saying his name out loud is taboo. Fraser struck like a snake. Before anybody else could move, he smashed the empty coffee cup against the table, grabbing a piece of the broken porcelain and stabbing it into the back of Walter's hand. Walter stared at the wound. It had all happened so fast that he had barely seen what was happening, scarcely feeling the injury. Now, pain blossomed through his hand, and his whole arm spasmed. My hand! He exclaimed. What did you do? I can't move it! Brett also found himself unable to move as he stared in a daze at what his friend had done. Fraser! He exclaimed. What? How could he move so fast? He thought. And why did he attack in the first place? I have so many questions and I don't even know where to start. Fraser glanced at Brett. If you have something to ask me, we can talk about it later. For now, this person is plotting against you. You couldn't see it? I knew something wasn't right, but I don't know exactly what was wrong, he thought. But I trust Fraser. He decided to sit tight and not interfere. I've underestimated you, Fraser, Walter said. But you've sealed your own fate with your attack here. His hand shook from the pain, but he didn't dare name his backer. This is nothing compared to what my backer would do to me if I said his name, he thought. And when he sees what Fraser has done, he'll avenge me. Fraser and his company are going to be wiped out of existence. He met Fraser's sharp gaze, and something in those eyes made him quail in fear. He felt like an invisible force was keeping him tied to the chair. He swallowed and braced himself for whatever was going to happen next. I said I would give you one chance to talk, Fraser said calmly. Since you decided not to take it, it looks like we're going to have to do things the hard way. Feel free to tell me when you want to continue our discussion. Walter saw Fraser move slightly before he felt a fresh wave of pain shoot up his arm. He realized that Fraser had shifted the piece of porcelain still in his hand just enough to press on the nerve. He gasped in pain before Fraser removed the splintered porcelain. He's not letting up, Walter realized. This man is the devil. Right now, your hand can still be saved, Fraser said conversationally. But I can't promise you'll be able to use it after we're finished here. And if you lose your hand, do you think you'll be any good to Sea Cloud Technology's mysterious financial backer? Walter shook in his seat. I'll give you 5 seconds to think about it, Fraser continued. 5. Sweat beaded on Walter's forehead. 4, 3, 2. He took a deep breath. 1. Fraser stepped forward. Okay, Walter yelled quickly. I've thought about it. I'll cooperate. Talk. Hugh Styles, Walter panted. He's the one backing Sea Cloud Technology. And he's the one controlling the city. And he's got even larger ambitions. He slumped in his chair. There, he thought. This is Fraser's problem now. And if I were him, I'd be petrified. No one goes against Hugh, unless they want to end up dead. He didn't know Fraser's ultimate plan to deal with Hugh. Thank you, Fraser said. Your hand probably won't suffer permanent damage. But you weren't exactly cooperative, and you've revealed some sensitive information. Do you think either Hugh or Nick will let you get away with this? What? Walter broke into a cold sweat. How do you know about Nick? Nick was the only outsider who knew who the two companies were working with Frandotech. I assume he's the one that told you that. You! Walter stared at Fraser in astonishment. You're the one who's controlling Ramtech and Key International. Who exactly are you? These are smaller companies than Sea Cloud Technology, he thought. But each is strong enough in its own right. How in the world can this incompetent-seeming man, whom I've heard does nothing but mooch off his in-laws, have as much power and prestige as Hugh Styles? You're not the one asking questions here, Fraser said. Tell me everything you know about Hugh. He fidgeted with the piece of porcelain, turning it around in his hand, but he held it up off the table where Walter could see it. It had the desired effect. Walter kept his gaze on Fraser's face and deliberately avoided looking at the fragment. Hugh's able to protect himself, Walter thought. But what good am I to him if my hands are damaged to the point of being unusable? And I know Hugh's personality. If I'm no longer useful to him, he'll throw me away like a pair of old shoes. My only real choice here is to cooperate with Fraser. He sighed. Oh, Hugh is my financial backer, but I don't know much about him. All I know is that he spends a lot of time at Cody's bar on Mesa Street. He's there pretty much every weekend. Anything else? Brett asked impatiently. Cigars. He likes old Cuban cigars. That's it? Brett shook his head at the irrelevant information and looked at Fraser. So, Cody's bar? Fraser was working on a plan, but he wasn't quite finished with Walter. One more question, he said. Is Hugh's actual last name Lee? Walter stared at him in shock. How did you know? The gang bosses of San Clemente had historically used code names instead of their real names to avoid unnecessary publicity. Not many people know Hugh's real last name, Walter thought. I don't know who said it out loud and gave it away to this man, but it wasn't me. Fraser's smile was as toothy as a shark's. I guessed. There's no way he guessed and got it right, Walter thought. Out of all the surnames he could have tried, Hugh hasn't gone by that name for a long time, and he worked hard to bury it in the past. Anyone who knew him as Hugh Lee has either been bribed, permanently silenced, or just plain forgotten it. To learn that secret, someone would need time, tenacity, and a certain amount of luck. Fraser had a flash of inspiration. I knew that Nick decided a long time ago that he wanted Natalia. I also know that Nick's last name used to be Lee, and he spent a lot of time on Mesa Street. It's in one of the busiest nightlife districts in the city, after all. When Walter mentioned it, I remembered something Ryan had told me. 7 years ago, Hugh suddenly rose to prominence in San Clemente. Coincidentally, 7 years ago, Nick also went off to college. I wasn't expecting a connection between the two of them. The timing and the fact that their last names are the same merits further investigation, but that's a matter for later. We can still make use of Walter now. He turned back to Walter. Do you know why Frandotech is so similar to your company? He asked earnestly. You've been a pillar of the business community for a long time, both here and in China, and both Brett and I were inspired by you when we formed our own company. Things change with time, of course, but I never expected that we would become enemies, and I deeply regret how things have turned out here. He sat down across from Walter, who was once more a trustworthy businessman. I'm genuinely sorry about your hand, he said. I don't want to abandon you to Hugh's mercy. For the time being, the best way forward is for you to continue to work with him. If either he or Nick gets suspicious, contact me immediately. I'm the only one who can keep you safe. Walter was miserable. I don't like it, but this is my only option right now, he thought. If I don't keep working with Hugh, I'll have to flee for my life. I'd have to abandon C-Cloud technology and run away. I've dedicated my whole life to building this company. I can't give it up. And even if I ran, how far would I get before Hugh found me? I'll cooperate with you and keep working with Hugh, he said. But what about Nick? He's going to be suspicious. We follow Nick's plan for now and let him win. Wait a minute, Brett jumped in. Fraser, do you know what you're talking about? It wasn't easy for us to get our hands on this company, and we've built it up. You actually want to give it away? He pulled Fraser away, glanced at Walter, and then continued in a low voice. I know that Walter was our inspiration and our idol once upon a time, but you can't just give up the company because of sentiment. Walter couldn't hear Brett's words, but he could guess what he was saying. Brett's a businessman, he thought. It's obvious he doesn't want to hurt his company's interests just to protect me. I have to convince him otherwise. He stood up with an effort and walked over to the two men. Mr. Andrews, he said, you've worked hard for Frandotech. I can understand what you're going through, because I've also worked hard for C-Cloud Technology. But I can promise you that if you keep me safe, I'll invest $50 million into your company. And I have a lot of business connections. I can help in other ways, whether it be technical expertise or business contacts. Whatever I can do for you, I will. Brett was speechless. 50 million and Walter's years of experience, he thought. That could really make Frandotech take off. Fraser's eyes narrowed. 50 million is a lot of money, he said. Maybe it's too much. It would make a world of difference, Brett said excitedly. It's a lot to invest in the company, but think of what we could do with that. Walter simply nodded. You misunderstood, Fraser clarified. When I said it was too much, I meant that Walter couldn't afford it. What? Brett laughed in surprise. You must be joking. C-Cloud Technology is a big corporation, and Walter's been heading it for a long time. That's pocket change to someone like him. A lot depends on the management of assets and debt, Fraser said. And if I'm right, Hugh controls a majority of the company's liquid assets. Walter, are you able to come up with $50 million without taking out a substantial loan? Walter hung his head in shame. I hate to admit it, he thought, but Fraser is right. All I've been doing for a long time is making money for Hugh. Although on paper we're a powerful, wealthy corporation, in reality we rank behind companies that are far smaller than we are. Brett turned to Walter with wide eyes. Is that true? He asked. Fraser's right, he said. I'm flat broke. But a promise is a promise, and I'll find some way to fulfill it. I'm not sure how, when Hugh controls my company in all but name, he thought. But I'll figure something out. Mr. Gibson, let me let you in on a little secret, Fraser said. I'm not after you or your company. My ultimate goal is to take down Hugh. Walter looked at him in shock. Oh, you might as well say you want to rule the galaxy, he said. That's impossible. Don't you want to get out from under his control? Yes, of course, but... Then I hope we have a very pleasant and fruitful collaboration. You can rest assured that you will always maintain control of your company. And as long as you keep your head down and do what I say, I'll guarantee your safety. Walter left the building a short time later, his head whirling with everything he had learned. I'm in a bad position, he thought. Being held hostage by both sides, and I'm not sure what to do about it or how long I can keep it up. As he drove through Frandotech's parking lot, his phone rang, and the caller ID showed that the caller was Nick. Walter shuddered and involuntarily looked around. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to relax, and answered the phone.
Is everything going okay, Walter?
Nick asked.
I don't want to be suspicious,
he thought.
But my men reported that he had left the building. I had to find out what was happening.
Everything's perfectly fine, Mr. Tomlins, he replied. I just had to resolve a situation. Brett Andrews thought I would really want to work with his small company. There was just one problem.
And what was that?
It's the Laplace's useless son-in-law. He lost his temper while Brett and I were speaking, and he hurt my hand. To make the story sound more realistic, Walter pressed down on his hand and let out a genuine grunt of pain. Can you believe he would do something like that to me? Nick laughed coldly.
That Fraser is going to get himself in trouble one of these days. Don't worry. I'll think of some way to get revenge on them.
Walter exhaled in relief as he hung up the phone. I think he bought it, he thought. If he found out the truth, I'd be dead for sure. This cloak and dagger stuff isn't for me. He quickly sent a text, waited a few minutes, and then deleted the text he had just sent. At Frandotech, Brett received the text. He watched it come in and then disappear shortly afterward. Fraser, he said. There's news from Walter. He just says, okay. Good, Fraser said. That means that Nick doesn't suspect anything. So, what do we do now? Well, it's the weekend. I think I'll head over to Cody's bar for a drink or two. You're going to confront Hugh? Brett asked, worried. We're just spreading our net, he thought. We're not ready to catch our fish yet. Why would we try to stir up any more trouble? Relax, Fraser replied. I just want to get a drink. The bar wasn't far from their building, so Fraser walked over. He ordered a cocktail and found a seat against the wall where he waited. As work started to let out, the bar became more crowded. Fraser sipped his drink and listened to the crowd as alcohol loosened their tongues.
Hey guys, Fraser here. Listen to the full episode of Unraveling the Son-In-Law exclusively on Pocket FM app. Click the link in description to install the app now.